Only One Bed by Katy Haye. The two guests who've just arrived are definitely a couple, or they want to be. Either way, innkeeper Isha is happy to supply the gentle nudge required to overcome their shyness. It's all part of the service. It started, as these things often do, as a bet. "I bet you that pair are together," Isha said, sotto voce, as the new arrivals clattered through the inn doorway. Berna, who was only behind the desk because she was shirking her responsibilities in the kitchen, gave a dismissive glance. "They're really not." Isha watched the way the two men were very carefully not touching each other, nor even catching the other's eye, when it would be perfectly normal to do so. "They're together, or they want to be," she persisted. 10 bits says so." Berna snorted gently. "If you want to throw your money around, who am I to stop you?" As the men approached the desk, the curly-haired one reached for his companion, then stopped himself deliberately, his hand clenching to a fist as though it were an effort to hold back. "I'll see to the horses," he muttered. The straight-haired one gave a nod, jaw tense. He stepped towards the desk and Berna turned her back, pretending to be busy. Isha adopted a professionally bright smile. "Beds for tonight, sir?" The straight-haired man dragged a hand through his hair and gave her a tight smile. "Aye, a private room, 2 beds." His tone was gravelly, almost spitting out the words. Isha made her decision. She ran a finger down the guest book purely for effect, then blew out a breath. "I'm so sorry, sir." Her smile grew a little bit more sincere. "We've only 1 room left, and that's just 1 bed, I'm afraid. Nice and big, though. Plenty of room for 2. Behind her, Berna squeaked, turning the sound into a cough. Isha ignored her. "I could throw in breakfast, to make up for the inconvenience." She suggested that with a third smile that was entirely free of guile. "I see." The straight-haired man cleared his throat and ran a hand through his hair again. "Very well. I suppose we'll have to make do." "Excellent. Here's the key. Breakfast at 8. Or I could bring it up to the room if you'd prefer." "Thank you. That would be kind. Perhaps you could just knock and leave it outside the door." She was sure the blush dusting the man's cheeks hadn't been there a moment ago. "Certainly." The curly-haired man stepped back inside as Isha was handing over the key. Straight hair plucked at his sleeve when they met at the bottom of the steps. They shared a few words, which Isha was sure was an update on their sleeping arrangements. Curly hair looked at her, startled. Isha beamed back and gave a little wave. Curly hair blinked, then a smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He nodded, an expression Isha chose to interpret as thanks. The two men headed up to the room, and Isha wouldn't be so impolite as to gawp, but she was fairly sure the gap between the two of them placed straight hair at the perfect level to admire curly hair's ass as they mounted the stairs. "You cheat!" Isha turned to see Berna regarding her furiously, hands on hips. "It's not a fair bet if you manipulate the outcome." "I'm not manipulating anything. I guarantee they'll be happy together. They probably came here from Ostia. They've got used to hiding their affections." She leaned against the desk and folded her arms to match Berna. "Didn't we say this place should be safe and free for all to be their true selves?" Berna opened her mouth to protest, then snapped it shut. "I still say you cheated. And I say you can keep your 10 bits if it's so important to you." Next morning, Isha set a tray on the floor outside room 4, just after 8, and rapped smartly on the door. "Breakfast!" She wasn't eavesdropping. It was just that her lace came undone, and it took long enough to fix that she heard the rumble of conversation and 2 voices laughing before the door cracked open, and curly hair. She wasn't looking, but just from her peripheral vision she saw that he was bare-chested, and his hair was absolutely wild, as though someone had run their hands through it while thoroughly preoccupied. Tugged the meal inside. Isha retreated to the reception desk with a smile. The 2 men stumbled downstairs an hour later. Curly hair cupped straight hair's elbow and muttered something into his ear before heading outside. Straight hair set the key on Isha's desk. "Checking out. We owe you for breakfast." Isha set the key back on its hook. No, breakfast's free. For the inconvenience." Straight hair smiled, his stern aspect transformed briefly. "It wasn't inconvenient at all." He pushed £0.50 across the desk. "A tip, then, for good service and an excellent night's sleep. I'll tell all my friends about this place." "Always delighted to hear we have happy customers," Isha assured him with a smile. He wasn't even out of the door before a snap snagged Isha's attention. Berna set 2 5-bit pieces on the desk and pushed them towards her. Isha halted the coins with the tips of her fingers. "You're right. I cheated. Bet's void." Berna shook her head. "You earned it. For playing Cupid." It became a private joke between the two of them after that. If Isha saw a couple she thought needed a bit of a nudge, she was happy to put them in a room that offered that nudge. Calling her Cupid had started as a joke, but she did seem to have a sixth sense about the inn's customers, which meant she knew exactly what to do when Cheery and Surly walked inside. "I'm just saying," Cheery was just saying as they walked in, saddlebags balanced on a slim shoulder, "it was worth the delay to catch that view." Surly grunted a sound that didn't suggest agreement. He was almost a foot taller than his companion, 8 or so years older, and his saddlebag looked more like adornment than burden on his broad shoulder. "Admit it," Cheery chided with a good-natured smile, giving her companion a nudge that was probably barely noticed. "I have the best ideas." "Your ideas have made us a day later than we need to be," Surly grumbled. He dropped his saddlebags to the floor and leaned back, stretching with a groan, fingertips extended to the ceiling. Cheery watched him, the smile fading to leave a wistful expression as she murmured, "Some of us don't want the journey to end." It was spoken too softly for Surly to hear, but Isha caught it. And, well, who could resist a plea like that? "Good evening, travellers. Bed and board for the night?" "Yes, please," Cheery said. Surly interrupted his stretch long enough to say, "2 rooms." "Good. It's a waste of money to hire 2 rooms," Cheery pointed out. Surly huffed. "A room with 2 beds, then." Isha scanned the guest book, purely for effect. "I'm very sorry we're very busy today. I've only got the 1 room. A nice big double bed. I'm sure you'll both fit." "Oh, well, I suppose we can manage," Cheery said, a gleam of hope lighting her eyes. Surly sighed. "Is that really all you can do for us?" Isha looked him straight in the face as she lied. "I'm afraid it is, sir." "We'll manage," Cheery insisted. She nudged Surly. "I can always get a blanket and a pillow and sleep on the floor if my skinny bones take up too much room." Surly huffed, gaze sweeping rapidly up and down his companion. "I can sleep on the floor." "The bed is perfectly big enough for 2, I promise," Isha interjected with a smile more innocent than her thoughts. "There," Cheery said, "it's settled." Surly sniffed and bent to pick up the saddlebags he'd dropped, adding Cheery's to his load. His shoulders still didn't appear overburdened. "And you aren't skinny," he grumbled. Cheery blinked. "You said I was skinny." "I never did," Surly protested in hurt tones. Cheery sat hands on hips, her brows tugging together. "Westerbrig, when we had to ford the river, you called me skinny. I heard you with my very own ears." "I said you were spry. That's completely different." When Cheery's brows remained furrowed, he threw up his hands in a despairing gesture, snatched the key and turned away. "I'm going to clean up." "I'll bring you some hot water," Isha called. "You mean Berna will bring some hot water," Berna corrected, stepping out of the kitchen with a gently steaming pitcher and a towel over her arm. "You're the very best of women and I adore you," Isha told her, blowing a kiss as her partner crossed to the stairs. Berna made a rude gesture and Isha tutted, although she was grinning. That expression fell off her face when she turned back to see Cheery watching Surly go, with an expression of such yearning it made her heart stutter. "Is spry better than skinny?" she asked, her tone pleading. Isha cleared her throat. She was more than happy to nudge, but giving advice wasn't her strong point. "I'm sure he didn't mean to insult you," she tried. Cheery sighed, slim shoulders slumping. "I think this was a mistake." Isha's heart quailed. "Do you really need 2 beds?" she asked. "I could try to move things around." She could give her one of their empty rooms, but she wasn't prepared to admit her deception immediately. "No!" Cheery was wide-eyed with alarm. "Please don't! This is the best chance I've had in a month." She sighed. "If I'm brave enough to take it." "You don't look timid to me," Isha ventured. "Is there any chance the bed will make us roll together?" she asked, and Isha was pleased to see the return of her cheerful good nature. "You could roll together, blame the bed, and I'll be terribly apologetic in the morning if that helps," she offered. Cheery barked a laugh, and Isha's worries vanished. Surly was very lucky if he got to witness that laugh on a regular basis. The woman sighed. "I took us to the waterfall at Bannervale. I mean, it's famous." Isha understood immediately. Youths for miles around used it as the perfect location to propose marriage, or just engage in a little dalliance. Isha and Berna had visited years ago. "And?" she prompted. Cheery waved a hand. "You heard him. He only cared that it's added half a day to our journey." "Have you told him how you feel?" Cheery gulped, then shook her head. "I'd rather have this much of him than nothing at all." Isha's heart ached. "Look, Spry isn't exactly my heart's dearest treasure, valued above all others, but he went to the waterfall with you, didn't he? I suppose. And he's here with you now. He grumbled, but he didn't seem actually distressed by the idea of sharing a bed, did he? You didn't think? Another sigh. I just wish I knew what to do. Isha laughed, and Cheery glared at her. I'm sorry, but that's life, isn't it? A smile twisted her lips, and she guessed she was forgiven. Look, I have a suggestion if you want it. Cheery raised her brows in invitation. If words and romantic gestures aren't working, perhaps you could try something else. Cheery rolled her eyes, and Isha held up a hand. She did have a suggestion this time. Like a massage. She gestured where Surly had last been seen. The day's ride has put all kinds of kinks into that broad back, I shouldn't wonder. I'm sure he'd appreciate you working them out with your nimble, skilful fingers. Spry fingers, Cheery said, a smile lifting one side of her mouth. Exactly. And I'm sure you'd like the chance to get your hands all over his skin. Cheery blinked several times rapidly, a grin stealing over her features. Don't drool, Isha said dryly. Hey! But she was grinning. Wait here. Isha ducked into the kitchen, while Berna wasn't there to interfere. She returned with a small phial of oil. She placed it in Cheery's hand. Infused with lavender for relaxation, and arnica for aches and bruises. Compliments of the house. Cheery's fingers closed around the phial. Thanks. She'd taken a single step away when Isha thought of something else. Wait. She ducked back into the kitchen, putting together the quickest platter she'd ever made in her life. So you don't have to come down for dinner, she suggested, placing the food on the desk. Cheery scanned the platter, oatcakes, cheese, cured meat and fruit. Her grin, hardly possible, widened. What a brilliant idea! Isha lifted a shoulder. We have to make the most of the delay that brought you here, don't you think? She gave a definitive nod. I'll do my best. Cheery was whistling as she mounted the steps, passing Berna as she went. Berna paused, raising her eyebrows at Isha across the room. Isha adopted her best innocent expression. Not that she supposed Berna would be fooled for a second. The ring of the desk bell fetched Isha out of the kitchen when dawn had barely broken the next morning. She smiled to find Cheery leaning against the desk, a broad smile on her face. Good morning, she said. A very good morning, Cheery agreed. Sleep well, Isha queried, because she couldn't help herself sometimes. Always, Berna would say. Barely slept a wink, Cheery confided, positively beaming. We kept rolling together, and the bed had nothing to do with it. That is good news. Could I get some breakfast to take up? Breakfast in bed, very romantic, I approve, Isha said. Coddled eggs and toasted rye bread? Perfect. It'll be ready in 5 minutes. She vanished back to the kitchen, humming as she worked. 2 hours later, most of their guests had left or were preparing for departure, when Surly walked downstairs, barefoot and with his rumpled shirt untucked. He set his elbows on the desk and leaned into Isha's space, casting a glance around before confiding, I wondered if the room might be available for another day. Or 2. Isha beamed. Certainly. You've decided to stay a little longer? Surly's face eased into a smile that wiped about 5 years off his age. Dana has convinced me a journey should be enjoyed for itself, not just a means to an end. What a wise young woman she is, Isha praised. Please, stay as long as you like. Surly nodded and turned back to the steps. Berna nudged Isha's shoulder, following her gaze. You should probably charge extra for the matchmaking. Isha smiled and leaned back into Berna's warmth, shaking her head fondly. The quickest way to spoil a hobby is to turn it into a job. Berna chuckled. Fine, fine. I'd hate to spoil your fun. Berna rarely intervened in Isha's hobby, which made it all the more significant when she walked in from pegging out the washing one afternoon and paused long enough to mutter, Watch this pair, before vanishing into the kitchen. Isha looked at the door in time to see a bearded man and his much younger, painfully nervous wife step inside. Beardy was broad, although much of that might have been the bear fur coat he wore. Slender would have fit twice into the coat. Isha wasn't bothered by their differences, but she understood Berna's concern immediately. The young woman's face was downturned and her shoulders hunched. Tension ran all the way down her body on the side closest to her husband. Isha noticed a shadow at her neck, which looked unpleasantly like a bruise. A double room for me and my wife, innkeeper, Beardy boomed. Slender hung back, looking around as though wanting to be sure of the exits. I'm so sorry, sir, Isha replied. All our double rooms are booked tonight. We can only offer a twin, 2 beds. Very narrow, I'm afraid." Beardy glared, sucking in a deep breath that Isha knew signalled a man about to throw his weight around. "I can offer you dinner tonight for free, for the inconvenience." She gave a big smile, her expression determinedly helpful. I suppose that would be acceptable." He turned to Slender, standing a little behind him as though hoping he might forget she was there. "Sort the bags, wife. It's been a long day. I need to relax." He swung back to Isha. "Bring me some ale." "Of course, sir." She glanced at Slender. "And I'll send Berna to help with your bags." "Oh, that's not necessary," she said, clearly surprised by the idea of someone willing to help her. Isha smiled so wide her jaw ached. "All part of the service." She leaned into the kitchen and asked Berna to help, with an expressive roll of her eyes. While her partner went to help Slender, she delivered a pitcher of beer to Beardy and returned to the reception desk. Berna strode down the stairs a few minutes later. "Your wife is resting in the room," she informed Beardy. "She said not to hold back dinner for her. She isn't hungry." "She doesn't stir herself, she doesn't eat," he said, as though his wife's comfort were a matter of small importance. He set his cup down with a clatter. "I'm ready for my dinner, though." "I'll bring stew right away." Berna passed Isha on the way to the kitchens, giving her a pointed look and a flash of eyebrows. "Do we need to intervene?" she murmured. "All in hand," Berna promised with a squeeze of her hand before she vanished into the kitchen. Beardy downed another pitcher of ale with his stew and bread, which was perhaps why he was snoring into his beard by the time he'd finished his meal. "I hope he's not as heavy as he looks," Isha murmured. "Pretty sure he's mostly coat," Berna replied, pushing up her sleeves. Between the two of them, they manoeuvred the snoring man up the stairs and into the leftmost bed of room 1. It was dark, and they slid their cargo into the bed as quietly as they could, so they wouldn't disturb his already sleeping wife. Beardy stomped downstairs late the next morning. "Good morning, sir." Isha was professionally cheerful as she looked up from her books. "Did you sleep well?" "Foul headache," he snapped, leaning so heavily on the desk it creaked alarmingly. Isha lifted her weight as though that might counterbalance the strain. "Have you seen my wife?" He looked around the room as though expecting her to appear now he'd voiced his demand. "Not this morning, sir," Isha replied as innocently as she could manage. "I thought she was still abed." "She rises earlier than I," he stated. Isha wasn't surprised to hear that. Beardy huffed and had just begun a second scan of the room when the front door flew open. "She's gone!" Isha barely recognised the young man, the couple's squire. "Helen's gone?" Beardy stuttered. "Gone where?" The squire blinked. "Not your wife, sir, her mare. The mare's gone, stolen." "Stolen?" Isha gasped in horror. "From the stables overnight? Surely not, but you were there. Did you see anything?" Beardy roared and blustered, while Isha tried to question the squire calmly. The worst of it was realised a few minutes later, when it transpired Helen and her mare had both vanished overnight. Even with a headache and having endured a poor night with scant sleep, Beardy could put the two things together. "She's run away from me," he roared. "The ungrateful wretch!" "Oh!" Isha pressed a hand to her chest. "What a dreadful thing to happen. Should you get after her? Surely she can't have gone far." Beardy cuffed the unfortunate squire around the ear. "Saddle my gelding. Every minute counts." 5 minutes later, both Beardy and squire were galloping away on the east road, heading back the way they'd come. Beardy was at a loss as to where his wife might go, other than back home. Berna, who'd been busy in the kitchen while the chaos reigned, leaned against the kitchen doorway and folded her arms. "Strikes me as a bad sign for marital harmony that he's no idea where his wife would go." Isha shrugged. "Strikes me as a worse sign that he'd no idea how unhappy she is." "Nor a care." Berna leaned back into the kitchen. "It's safe to come out," she called softly. Helen stepped cautiously into view. "He's gone east," Isha told her. "Can you avoid the east road?" Helen nodded. "I'll head north. My sister will aid me if I just get to her." She looked from Berna to Isha. "Thank you so much for this." Her gaze continued to dart, a nervous habit. You're strangers." "At some level, we're all sisters," Berna said. Isha waved a hand dismissively. "And we're happy to help." Berna stepped past them both to the side door. "She really is, you know," she told Helen. "Isha's a sucker for a happy ending." "You say that like it's a bad thing," Isha protested. Isha wasn't listening, busy unlocking the woodshed. Helen followed her out, arriving just in time for Berna to lead out her mare, already saddled and bridled. The mare whickered to see her mistress. Helen took the reins and swung into the saddle. She gathered the reins to address the two women. Thank you. I'll always be grateful. Isha waved away the thanks. Just live a happy life. Helen wheeled the horse to head north and clicked her tongue. The mare obediently trotted away. Isha regarded Berna as her partner ambled towards her. Sucker for a happy ending? Berna smiled. Did I speak a lie? Berna reached her side and Isha slid an arm around her waist. I just want everyone to have what we have. Exactly. Berna pressed a soft kiss to her lips. Sucker for a happy ending. Did I say there was something wrong with that? No. Isha could barely kiss for smiling. Not a thing.